call this meeting to order. This is the regular school board meeting of the Northfield Public Schools. It is Monday, May 12th, 7 p.m. Dr. Richardson, there were a couple items in our table file.
Yes, the items we have for the consent grouping are all personnel items. They include appointments, some increase, decrease, and change in assignments, and also 2 resignations. So if we could get those added to the table file.
All right. If there's no objection, we will add these to the agenda as we move forward. This is now an opportunity for public comment. This is an opportunity for members of the school district to address the board. This is not an opportunity for dialogue or debate, but is a listening opportunity for members of the board. If you would like to address the board, I would ask that you come to the podium, you state your name, address, if there's an organization you represent, and then we ask that you limit your remarks to 3 minutes. So, is there someone who would like to start us off?
I get that pleasure. My name is Scott Query. I live in Webster. I teach 2 students in the Northfield School District. And Mrs. Chairman and members of the board, I'd just like to say thank you for giving us this opportunity to come out and speak with you about the Northfield Raiders Clay Target team. And as you can see, we brought along a little assistance here. Just a little history about the Clay Target League. It started back in 2001 with Mr. Jim Sable. And Jim Sable was answering a call to mentorship. And his first couple mentors were out of the Orono School District. And they started out with 6 athletes, and he brought them out to the Plymouth Gun Club. And they just had a great time. And with that mentorship, he built those relationships, and those 6 kids went out and started talking to other family and friends within other school districts. And soon they had the Wayzata High School, the Minnetonka High School, and the Hopkins School were all participating in this mentorship program. The program really started taking off, and just a couple of statistics. In 2001 to 2008, there was 3 teams, 3 schools, and 30 athletes. In 2009, it grew to 6 teams, 6 schools, and 60 athletes. In 2010, growth again was 13 teams, 15 schools, 340 athletes. 2011, more growth, 29 teams, 34 schools, 707 athletes. In 2012, again, 57 teams, 100 schools, 1,715 athletes. 2013, the same year that Northfield Raiders started their Clay Target team, we had 115 teams participate, 215 schools, 4,200 athletes. 2014, this current season, we have 185 teams, 275 schools, 6,100 athletes. I'm not quite sure how many school districts are within the state of Minnesota. I think there's around 500, and we're at 275 schools participating. So a great positive response from all the school districts around the state. And the growth is just continuing. The popularity of our sport is what captures a wide variety of athletes. As in basketball, it's helpful to be tall. In track, it's good to be fast. With clay target shooting, the physical aspects are partially removed. Clay target shooting is a sport of mental concentration and control. This allows a wide variety of athletes to participate that may not participate in other sports. With new athletes, we as coaches and parents...
Can I ask you to just wrap up your comments? I'm sorry.
Perfect.
Okay.
I just want to say that the Activity Advisory Committee has given us a strong recommendation to be incorporated into the varsity sport, and we would really appreciate your consideration in regards to incorporating us as a varsity sport. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Lauren. I also live here in Northfield. As a senior this year, I was a little upset that we didn't get to
Pardon?
letter.
What's Lauren's last name?
Selner.
Thank you.
As a senior this year, not getting to letter was a little bit of a letdown, but I would like to help the seniors of next year and all the other students have the chance to letter in a sport that they enjoy doing, such as trap shooting. We did have the top shooter of the state last fall season, and he didn't have the chance to letter, which was a little sad for our team, but he did, I mean, he was the top in the state, so that was nice. It is the fastest growing sport in the state, with ages 6 to 12, and it's co-ed, so anyone can join if they feel like it. It's pretty much doubled every year since 2008, as in the size of who's been on a team. Safety is a huge issue with us. We all have to take the gun safety course before we're even allowed to be on the team. Before every season, we have to have a debriefing about safety and about how to use our guns. And we really stress the safety of just the sport, because obviously we don't want anything to go wrong. Also, like the administration, if it were to be a lettering sport, they wouldn't have to do too much. Most of it is handled by the league and the coaches themselves. So, I guess it'd be easy. And it's a fun sport, and a lot of us like doing it, and it's fun. And we all would like the chance to letter and be a varsity sport recognized by our school.
Thank you.
My name is Mackenzie Matthews. I also am from Northfield, and I'm a senior. And like Lauren, I would also not be able to letter, but I would like to be able to see the younger kids in the sport be able to gain confidence by knowing that they can letter, and I think that would boost their scores and boost how they perform. And also, my biggest point is that it's a co-ed sport, and males and females can sort of compete on the same level. Like in a lot of other sports, like I'm in swimming, and there's a boys season and there's a girls season, and they're different, and they don't really interact very much. But in trap shooting, like boys and girls do the exact same thing, and they get along well, and it's just a good environment to be in with both genders.
Okay. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Susan Russ, and I live at 64 Timber Court, Northfield, Minnesota. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak with you tonight. You may have received my letter this week outlining the reasons why trap shooting should be a varsity sport. Tonight, I'm just going to highlight a few main reasons why trap shooting should become a varsity sport at Northfield High School. Clay target shooting is an Olympic sport, and adding it as a varsity sport will not cost the district any money. There are several districts in Minnesota who currently recognize trap shooting as a varsity sport. Some of these include Hastings, Brainerd, Lakeville, Prior Lake, Hopkins, Stillwater, Detroit Lakes, and Albertville. All students who participate in trap shooting are required to pass the firearm safety test, a course that consists of at least 12 hours of classroom work and field experience with firearms. Trap shooting is a no-contact sport, and during the 3 seasons of trap, there have been no injuries. Compared to football, which is commonly referred to as the most injury-prone sport in the U.S. As stated by the National Institute of Health, football leads all other sports in the number of injuries. In 2007, more than 920,000 athletes under the age of 18 were treated in emergency rooms, clinics, and doctor's offices, all for football-related injuries. If football is included in varsity, shouldn't the case for trap shooting be included as well? I feel that if shooting were to become an official high school sport, it would encourage students with skill sets other than strength and speed to participate in a varsity sport. Trap shooting focuses on skills such as accuracy, precision, and concentration, which are equally as challenging as skills required in other varsity sports. Trap shooting is a co-ed, individual, and team sport. All athletes participate, so there's no sitting on the bench. Everyone is very inclusive, and I've gotten to know a lot of my peers through trap shooting. There's a stereotypical belief that shooting is a male-dominant sport. Although there are many guys on the team, over the course of the years, I've seen many new girls come try it out. Trap shooting is a sport that brings people together. My family does a lot of shooting and hunting, and this is a source of quality family time. Thank you for considering my perspective.
Hello, I'm Eric Lundstrom, and I'm a freshman here at high school. And one of the greatest things about this sport for everybody in the league is that the fact that it is co-ed, but also the nice age range. When I first started, I really looked up towards the senior shooters, and they could really help mentor me into learning how to be a better shot, and also they'd motivate you to be better. And with being able to letter as it being a high school sport, it'd really make the motivation greater for you to work towards. And also the range is always very safe. We are always very smart about where we have our muzzle pointing of our guns, and the instructors are great because they're always watching out for anything that might be a hazard, and they will catch it before it happens. And with it being a high school sport, it would really be helpful for also like expanding the know about of like outdoor sporting. The sporting clays is really fun, and you can really learn. It takes a lot of focus and also coordination. It's also a great sport for people who have injuries. Like last year, I hurt my knee in football, but I could still do the fall trap shooting because it didn't really affect my legs too much, and I could enjoy a sport that was low contact, and it was a really great time. Also, having the older shooters that would be able to letter, it would really be able to show what you've done for your school. It'd be fun for us to be able to represent our school as Northfield and be able to have that patch on our letter jacket. And being in swimming, like my first year in swimming, I was so motivated. I was like, I want a letter so bad, and I did. And I just felt so good after that, and it made me come back year after year so far. So it'd be really great for us to have that for this trap shooting. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tina Dockett. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to address all of you tonight. I teach 7th grade math at the middle school, and I look around and I've had some of your kids in my class. In fact, Caroline helped me with my speech today. She arranged it for me. I'm the assistant golf coach for the girls' golf team, and I also volunteer coach for the trap shooting team. Why did I get interested in trap? I've been a hunter myself for 12 years, love to take my kids out, my 4-legged dogs, and hunt. And I've had to do a lot of trap shooting to practice. I wanted to share this passion I have developed of shooting trap with the kids, which is why I decided to get involved in volunteering for the team. As a teacher at the middle school, the things I see that children lack the most of are self-esteem, lack of self-confidence, but what they want the most is to be included and accepted by a group. The fact that we have the opportunity here tonight to validate these kids and as a community honor and support them by making trap shooting another varsity sport, I am so proud and excited to be a part of it. Providing another letter sport just gives kids a new avenue to be stars and feel good about themselves. Not all kids are athletic enough to participate in the other sports, which tend to require certain strength and speed. The beauty of this Olympic sport is any kid can participate. What a phenomenal path to be able to provide these kids. Approving the sport as a letter team and creating this opportunity for kids who don't have the athleticism required for other sports gives them another place for them to go to be validated and acknowledged by their peers in the community. The other beauty of this trap shooting team is everyone participates, and as Katie said, no one sits the bench. So whether a child hits 1 target or 25, these kids have a sense of pride in themselves and their team. So the thought of being able to provide children with the opportunity to participate in another leathered sport is really exciting to me. You wouldn't believe how this one little sport has impacted their lives, but it does. This is what it can do for these kids and others in the community. by making us a varsity sport. It helps kids gain more self-esteem and confidence as a result of being part of a varsity sport. Being able to put this on a college application when being asked if they participated in a varsity sport. Students' bragging rights for being on a varsity sport, which at this age they have a high need for. And these kids know the difference between varsity and club sports. I actually pulled a couple of my classes today and they told me, oh yeah, that's true, Mrs. Dockin. And then they proceeded to help me with my speech and make things different. Everyone that gets to participate only 2 hours a week. We have a student that has health issues on the team, but she loves the fact that it's only 2 hours a week so she can actually participate. And then having it on the weekend, you would be amazed going out there and seeing that all of the families come just to watch. The siblings are coming, the family's coming, and I had a mom tell me, yes, we have a nice little family drive down to the track shooting, and it's just some time to spend with the family because during the week it gets so crazy busy with all the other activities. And thank you for all that you do for the community. Please support and validate our children by making this a lettered sport. Thank you very much.
Is there anyone else who wishes to address the board? All right. Thank you. All right, we are ready to move on to approval of the minutes. Board members, you have in your packets the minutes from the last school board meeting that was held on April 28th. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Moved by Julie, seconded by Ann. Any discussion? All those in favor of approving the minutes say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The minutes are approved. Announcements and recognition.
Okay, I have several this evening. First of all, we'd like to congratulate the following students who represented Northfield Middle School at the State History Day on May 3rd. Celine Falken-Geist, Emmett Forster, Carissa, Friend Shu.
I think it's close. Is that right?
And again, I apologize if obviously if she or parents are listening. Rowan Jasnock, Elias Cruz, James Muth, Christina Narson, Leah Pack, Milo Paxton, Kaya Schomburg, and Samuel Temple. Congratulations to all the participants and to Leah Pack and Samuel Temple, who each received honorable mention for their individual documentaries. Also would like to congratulate the Northfield Middle School Student Council. They've had a month-long effort to examine the impact of cancer upon the school community and the special people in their lives. They also collected $1,646.15 for the American Cancer Society through weekly fun activities at the school. I'd also like to congratulate the Northfield Middle School staff, students, and families who teamed up with Torch and Growing Up Healthy to host the 4th annual Cinco de Mayo celebration. An estimated gathering over 500 participants enjoyed food, entertainment, and games, and tickets for treats and games raised an additional $500 for Torch scholarship. We'd like to also congratulate middle school social studies teacher Earl Weinman, been named a regional honoree in the WEM Foundation's 2014 Outstanding Educator Awards program. Mr. Weinman is being honored in the Teacher Achievement category, which recognizes exemplary teachers, support, inspire, and assist students to attain greater learning as evidenced by student achievement. We'd also like to congratulate several of our Northfield High School music students who've been chosen to participate in the 2014-15 All-State Music Ensembles. These students were selected from over 1,900 students who recorded auditions. They will participate in a one-week camp in August and perform at the annual MMEA Midwinter Clinic in February 2015 at Orchestra Hall. Congratulations to the following students in choir: Jacob Fry, Abigail Gort, and Peyton Mansfield, Greta Nelson, Sammy Ponder, and Hannah Varley. In orchestra, Henry Beamers, and band, Allison Langston, Miles Broski, and William Beamers. Also would like to give a special congratulations to a couple of really interesting and very positive things that groups of students did. Last week we got an email message from the Owatonna girls lacrosse coach, who happens to also be a member of the Owatonna School Board. He wanted to bring to our attention something rather special that occurred last week's girls lacrosse game between Northfield and Owatonna. At the start of the game in Northfield, the refs approached the Owatonna team and said that since they were playing on a satellite field with no PA system, there would be no announcement of the starting lineups and no singing of the national anthem. Spontaneously, the Owatonna girls team started singing the national anthem, quickly followed by the Northfield girls joining in. Soon the parents started singing in as well, and it was an incredibly special moment for everybody that was there. We'd also like to note that the Minnesota State High School League had an item in their newsletter about some of our Nordic skiers. Individual from the Rochester team basically had written a letter indicating that they were finishing up the Nordic ski events in Rochester, had pulled down the cones and flags, still had one of the Rochester students had not yet come in. And so two of our students who came in basically asked if they could help and actually volunteered to go out, sweep the course, and actually find the other girl. The individual indicated they were already cold, and they brushed it off, then went backward up the course, and basically then stayed with the girl when they found her and brought her back in. So again, just a great message in terms of sportsmanship and appropriate behavior in terms of this piece. And the gentleman who are the coaches for the Rochester team just said they didn't think an unselfish act like that should go unnoticed. So there's that piece. And then finally, I'd like you all to please help congratulate Director of Finance Val Merstorff on her selection as the 2014 Minnesota Association of School Business Officials Rising Star Award recipient, and she has the award to prove it, which is a Rising Star. Val was recognized 2 weeks ago at the Masbo Spring Conference at Breezy Point. According to the Masbo website, the Rising Star Award was created to recognize and acknowledge the efforts and accomplishments of Masbo active members with a minimum of 2 and not more than 7 years of experience in the profession. To be nominated for this award, individuals should have made a positive impact to their organization, have demonstrated potential for future contributions and leadership positions. So congratulations to Val on being recognized for the excellence she brings to our district every day. And that's all the announcements I have for this evening, unless others have other announcements.
Board members, other announcements? Ann?
Yep. I attended the Sibley Math Rocks program this year. This thing.
Science Rocks?
Science Rocks, yeah. They did a lot of math too. Yeah, and it was great. It was just a great way to learn about science. And I was glad to go.
Julie?
I just had a couple things. This time of year is always busy. But I wanted to just make some comments about another successful prom event. Between the grand march and the after prom party, and prom itself could not happen without a great deal of time and energy and effort by lots and lots of people. So wanted to just thank teachers, administrators, high school custodians, parents, the prom committee, who did an amazing job interpreting the Roaring Twenties theme in the Grand March set, the efforts of the parents for the after prom party, the number of businesses in town who supported their efforts with prize donations, and Terry and Julie Holloman, who are always so wonderful about hosting that event in such a fun and safe environment that Jesse James Lanes provides. And talking to other parents in other districts, they're always quite envious of our district and that efforts we do to make it a very fun but safe night for our students. And then one other event at Bridgewater was the Camp Hero event, which was really wonderful. So thank you to Nancy Antoine and her staff for their wonderful interpretation of the Camp Hero theme. The school was creatively transformed with wonderful arts and displays, all which centered around the themes of fitness, leadership, character, education, as well as some fundraising. So thanks to all those people.
Great. Other announcements or recognition? All right, great. We are ready to move on to our first item for discussion and report, which is the proposed 2014-2015 budget. So our rising star Val will.
All right, we're doing capital first. Good evening. A couple more budgets, and then you'll be done with me for a little while. So I'm going through the capital budget as well as the internal service fund tonight. So we're going to start with the capital budget. So as you know, the capital budget is made up of a couple different funding sources, including our operating capital, lease levy, capital levy, health and safety, and deferred maintenance. Our capital levy, which is our voter-approved $750,000, does make up the largest piece at the 36%. The operating capital, which is a state formula, is our next biggest at 29, which is a mix of aid and levy, and it's roughly $199 for ANCP, which will all switch this coming year with their new people unit calculations. Deferred maintenance, also formula driven, roughly $99 or $60, excuse me, and then it's adjusted by the average age of our buildings. Health and safety is really project-based, based on what we think we're using it on. There's a system we enter the projects in, and the revenue kind of gets generated. That's a very simplistic way of saying that, but that's essentially what happens. And then our lease levy, which is just driven based on our lease costs, basically. So that's kind of what makes it up. We're looking at just over $2 million this year. So. And then this is kind of another way to look at it. I broke it out into formula and non-formula. So the operating capital, aid and levy, and deferred maintenance are the formulas I listed before. And then the capital projects are approved. Health and safety and levy are both kind of data-driven. And then if you were able to stay awake for my debt service presentation, which is difficult, I know, I did talk about the capital facility bond and how it's included in the debt service, but it does not net effect to the taxpayers. It's nothing. And that negative adjustment you see is that the payment for that coming off of our operating capital. So that's where the other side of that is. So that nets us at just a little over $2 million. And then just the note on the bottom, the $275,000 or so for our 2006 capital facility bonds will mature in February of 2016. So we'll see that come off, but we will see the one that we just renewed come on next year. So. And then for our expenditures, we do have several commitments that we have consistently paid out of capital. So we'll continue with that. Our lease facility spaces, which obviously drives our lease levy revenue, and our health and safety projects and deferred maintenance are all, those two are very specific. You have to spend them on certain things, so we do that. And then we've also paid for our lease purchase of Sibley out of this fund. It is not part of our lease levy revenue, but we do pay for it out of the capital. So then the rest of whatever's remaining in that year does get prioritized with our capital committee. We meet annually. So our school and program allocation is about $128,000. Each school building gets a little allocation that they can spend discretionary on whatever they feel their building needs are, as well as some of the larger programs. And then textbooks and digital curriculum, which is overseen by our Director of Teaching and Learning, is at $150,000 this year, which is pretty consistent with what we've seen historically. Facilities will be about $309,000, and that includes things. We'll be resurfacing the Greenville parking lot, replacing a truck and plow, and some other projects. And then technology will be $584,000. And that will include 50% of the student iPad lease, which is what we committed last year that we would spend out of it this year, as well as replacing a 10-year-old core network switch, which I don't know what that is, but there it is.
But
And
it's
very
important.
expensive. And replacing some staff computers and updating that, as well as updating some computer labs. So our total expenditures are about 2.1. And then when you put that all together, you can see in 12-13 we had the spend down of the fund balance, which was intentional for the security upgrades as well as a couple one-time expenditures. And then for 13-14 we are planning to spend roughly what we brought in. We will have a couple of carryover. All of the security projects were completed in 12-13, so I expect that to be a little bit lower, closer. I think our goal was more the $600,000 range for the operating capital, but that's all not finalized yet, so we'll see how that lands this year. So for 14-15, we are proposing to spend down slightly, not in the operating capital though, it's actually in our health and safety this year. We have a significant negative adjustment coming through on the levy. It's roughly $90,000. And the director of buildings and grounds and I met with a health and safety specialist actually a couple months ago, just to see what we're doing and how it gets calculated. The revenue calculation and expenditure is very it's an accumulation of your revenue and expenditure since 1999, and it takes a bunch of different things into account. And so we just really wanted to know what we were doing and how to make it a little more stable going forward. And her suggestion was to spend the same amount each year, regardless of how your adjustments are coming on the levy, and that should level it out going forward. So we are projecting to spend the same amount as we are this year in health and safety, which is roughly $270,000, even though our revenue will be about $90,000 to $100,000 short of that. So that's why you see the increase in the health and safety negative fund balance. And she did say that it's very unlikely that that fund balance will ever become positive, because we're not sure if it was being reconciled properly before our arrival. And so there were probably expenditures that we never actually saw the revenue for, which you can't obviously correct at this point. So basically, long story short, it's typical to have the swings in the health and safety, and actually to have a negative fund balance, which I would not prefer, but they told me that that's normal. So the maintenance, as you can see, we're planning to spend the same, and then just a very slight increase in the operating capital. So still ending positively in balance with what we wanted, where our goals were. So overall, I think that's it. So I would welcome any questions you guys have about that.
Just do the footnote, which is, yes, the health and safety is almost always a negative balance, because you are spending things and then basically being reimbursed for those expenditures a year after the expenditures occur. So you almost always have a negative balance. I think what our consultant is now telling us is a way to get that more in line is to look at spending approximately the same amount in each year. But I think if you would go back and look through health and safety expenditures over the last decade, every year you would have seen a negative balance, because we're always spending dollars and then getting reimbursed in terms of those expenditures in the following year.
So my question was on how do you do the planning so that you can spend the same amount every year? I mean, it just seems
There's
like
certain projects that we plan for. We have to do fire extinguisher checks, and Paul Bell has a list of things and their potential costs that we have. And then we also have a 10-year plan, obviously, and he can pick out the things that qualify for health and safety. It's very prescriptive, so there's only certain things that you can hold there. A lot of it is, detecting the problem, but then they won't pay for you to fix it. But there are several things that we have to do annually, certain checks and things that do qualify. So we try to kind of level it out.
Sorry, board members, other questions? No?
And when the fire marshal comes through, if the fire marshal identifies certain pieces that need to be corrected, those automatically can be qualified for health and safety. So that's another way. And I think the key thing on the capital, operating capital here is the fact that almost all of these things are based on the 10-year plan that Paul has and also our long-range technology plan. So when we meet for those pieces, a lot of those things have been thought through well in advance, and this is just a manifestation of that.
All right. Ready to move on to the Internal Service Fund.
So, as you're aware, the Internal Service Fund is the fund that accounts for our self-insured health and dental plans. We became self-insured with our dental in fiscal year 06, and then we added the health in fiscal year 12. So we are on our second full year currently. Next year will be our third full year in the health. The revenue for this fund is just from the premiums that the district employees and retirees or whoever's using the plan contributes, and the expenditures reflect actual claims as well as the costs to administer them. We currently have Delta Dental and Medica as our providers, and it is a standalone fund that is separately presented in our audit, separate of all of our other funds. So for dental, total enrollment is 487. This is roughly about 70% of our active staff, so it's really strong participation, and it's been very stable, which is great. The premiums, you can see are current and proposed. The Benefit Advisory Committee is proposing that we increase the premiums 50%, and actually bringing them halfway back. If you remember last year, we reduced the premiums 50% to offset the increase in the health insurance, and so we're bringing it halfway back. So not even to where they were last year, and a lot of people are like 50%. But truthfully, for single employees, we'll be paying 35 cents a month, and for family, it's less than $20 a month. So still extremely affordable, even though the 50% does sound quite large. But and then also very strong participation with the health program, 398 total. About 65% of our active staff, and then we do have 2 plans that we offer. And so you can see our current and proposed. We did have a really great year with claims. We had very low claims, and so our renewal was actually extremely favorable this year, which was fantastic coming off of a higher claim year. So the Benefits Advisory Committee is actually recommending to hold it flat, which is wonderful news. And while everybody would be ecstatic about that, there's also a 4% increase in the district contribution, so all the staff will actually be paying less for their health insurance next year. And this year I broke out, last year I had just one summary of the fund balance and charges for services and such. I actually broke them out so you can see the dental and the health insurance fund balance separately. And so you can see in the dental for 13-14, we are projecting to spend that down because of the 50%, and projecting to spend it down again next year, just not quite at higher rate. And this year I did talk with the Benefits Advisory Committee about setting a fund balance goal for each fund. Just we kind of had a target to work with going forward and setting the rates and making decisions. And so for the dental, we did decide to do between $200,000 and $300,000 as our fund balance goal, and that is reflective of 2 months of claims expense and admin charges, as well as the potential run-up if we were to ever switch back to fully insured. So just something we could have concrete tie back to a number that made sense. So as you can see, we are projecting to end within our fund balance goal next year, which will be great. So the revenue is slightly up. The insurance plans were having a slightly higher year, so my projection is a little bit higher. As you're well aware, I'm well known for being conservative, so that's why it's a little higher than you can see historically. Admin fees are pretty similar. So, but overall, I mean, the dental fund's been extremely consistent and has increased the fund balance every single year since we've been self-insured. So the the work of the Benefit Advisory Committee is really shown in what we were able to do for the staff in just spending on that fund balance and capitalizing on some of the decisions they've made along the way. So, and then for the health, as you can see, 11-12 was our first year, so we had no fund balance to begin with, and we did end positively and have grown it each year, projecting to grow it again this year because we've, like I said, had a really great year so far. For next year, slight increase in revenue really just due to changes in enrollment, because obviously the rates are being held flat. Insurance claims, I'm projecting a little high. I've taken average of what the insurance company thinks that we will be running at, as well as historically where we've been. We kind of try to come out with an average. Again, would much rather be conservative than short on that. As you can see, the admin fees did actually decrease. We, like I said, had a really favorable renewal, so that'll be going down, which is good. So still projecting to grow. The fund balance goal for the health was between 2 and 3 million. So nice and easy to remember, 200 and 300,000, 2 million, 3 million. So not quite there, but this will be our third full year. So still really, really great for being our third year and having a tough year on claims last year. So overall, I'm really, really pleased with how the self-insurance has been going. So, and that's very, very much due to the work of the Benefit Advisory Committee. So with that, any questions?
Board members, questions? John?
What level is it that our reinsurance kicks in at if we're experiencing high claims year? 100,000 for a person?
Per claim, I believe.
Okay.
Or like, yeah, like per person.
But is there an amount where we have such a high number of claims that we also have reinsurance at that point?
Do you know the number?
Yeah, there's reinsurance for reinsurance. You know, there's the individual, and that's called the stop loss, and then we of course have the district-wide stop loss. And I don't have that number off the top of my head, John, but I can certainly get it for you. It has remained, I think, relatively similar than to when we started before. But there's both the individual stop loss on an individual person, and then there's also the aggregate stop loss. And so there's a number of different reinsurance pieces. And in addition, that's why our fund balance in this is so important, because if we were to have an unusually high year, we have the ability to mitigate that. Remember, the self-insurance, one of the key things we were trying to solve were the wide swings that we would have in premiums that we had experienced when we were part of the co-op. And so as we keep moving forward and building that fund balance, if we have those unusual years, our goal is to be able to mitigate that for our employees and not leave money on the table with the cooperative. So I'll get you the aggregate stop loss number. I just don't have it off the top of my head, but there's both the individual and the aggregate piece.
Other questions? Carrie?
I'm just wondering, can you speak to what the legislature's doing with
Well, I'd like to, but they haven't done anything unless we're hearing something new today. The piece that we're dealing with, and again, this is called HITA, which is the Health Insurance Transparency Act. Basically, the component in it that we have the greatest concern about right now is that they are trying to place all school districts inside the HITA, regardless of whether they're self-insured, whether they're part of a co-op, whether they're doing individual purchasing through an insurance vendor. The problem is that when we use a self-insurance process, we use a third party who basically negotiates our insurance for us and goes out to the various insurance companies and negotiates the best prices. And by doing that, we've been able to really keep the cost down. There's a number of districts in the state that are using the same self-insurance methodology, and as a result, the Senate was able to put an amendment in that basically excludes self-insured districts from having to be involved. However, in the House version, there is no such exclusion, and there's a strong push on the part of the House and leadership to make sure that every school district in the state is included. So we still are waiting to see the results of that piece. Another big issue that we currently have with the way it is set up is that you're required to have at least 3 vendors then bid, that you have sealed bids, and that at least one of the vendors has to be PEEP, which is the Public Employees Insurance Program, which already has indicated to us they do not do self-insurance. So we're really struggling with the way this thing is currently written and the fact that it doesn't seem to give the ability for school districts actually to work hard to save money. But again, it's also called the Health Insurance Transparency Act, and we're really not sure where the transparency is either. So I guess that was a comment I'll let that go.
And the comments committee was this morning.
Yes.
And I know there's some of the information we got today was just a real effort. It's what we need to do now is if you have an opportunity to talk with your legislatures, the only thing you need to remember is like the full exemption for self-insured districts. And this is why. Because we had multiple vendors proposing, and our third-party advocate was able to really sharpen people's pencils. And we have seen this where we do not believe we would see the same level of competition in a traditional sealed bid method. And so it's actually even more transparent, and I think it's better for our taxpayers, it's better for our employees for sure, and it's better for the way that we finance it. And so we really think it is important that we get that exemption, and I've been communicating with our legislatures, and I know that they are certainly working, the Senate is certainly working to try to maintain that exemption, but we really need that, because I think that it will be just different if we don't have this ability that we've worked so hard for so long to get to.
But again, we just don't have any action, and unfortunately, they're having a disagreement between the House and Senate and the governor's office as to what the final targets are going to be, and that seems to have put everything else in lockup right now. Again, remember the legislature has 1 week left, so we're going to come right down to the wire as always, and there will be deals that get cut. Again, the encouragement we've given our legislators is if you lose the self-insurance piece out of the Senate version, then vote the bill down. So, I mean, it's that important to us to see that happen. And there's a significant number of districts in the state that are self-insured that are using the same strategy to keep our costs down. So to have that undone, again, for a purpose that we don't see is actually a benefit. And also in a situation where if the transparency is really about making sure that the employees involved are part of the process, we've had a health insurance advisory committee that's been in place for a decade that really shepherded the implementation of self-insured dental and the self-insured health insurance. And we'd actually go backwards if we went to a sealed bid strategy. So this one's a pretty important one, and we're still hoping to hold the line on that. And again, any encouragement that you can give to our local legislators about that would be greatly appreciated.
Other questions? All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Val.
We are ready to move on to our second item for discussion or report, which is the community services preliminary budget. And it looks like we are shifting gears, and we have Aaron coming up.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here tonight to present the Community Services 2014-15 preliminary budget. I always want to start with just a little bit of a reminder of kind of the principles of community education. So as we look at them, I'm also going to give a few facts. For our last fiscal year, Community Services had just over 31,000 participants in our program, which is actually up 4,000 participants over last year, which is really exciting to see such an increase in growth in the last year. We also had almost 79,000 community members who received access to school district facilities through the Community Services Division. This is just slightly down from last year. There is a couple of reasons. was not a year where we held caucuses, which often bring in lots of people into our buildings. We also now only have one church that uses our facilities, which is obviously a regular user, and we previously had two churches that were regularly using facilities in the district. Again, also then just a kind of a reminder of some of the programs that are associated with the Community Services Division, and just really again want to give you some highlights as we look through them. Our Adult Basic Education program, which is a consortium, the Dakota Prairie consortium, which involves Farmington, Randolph, and Northfield. We had 197 students in this last year, of which 79% of those students attend classes in Northfield, which is pretty significant when you think of the other communities in those programs. Last year, 60% of the students attended in Northfield, so it's another area that we are really seeing some growth in the amount of students that are attending classes in Northfield. We have classes both at the Northfield Community Resource Center, which is where most of them are held, and then we also have classes at Greenbelt Park, both during the day and in some of the evenings as well. In driver's education in the last year, we've added a parent awareness component called Point of Impact. This is a free class we offer and encourage both parents and their teenage drivers to attend. And it really helps to educate parents on those new laws that are there as they teenagers become drivers. And for parents who maybe haven't taken any driver's courses lately, there really have been a lot of changes in laws recently. And so it's a night where we have partnered both with the Northfield Police Department and the Sheriff's Departments to come in and really help explain what those new laws around driving are and how they will affect their teenage drivers. In the youth programs area, we recently in the last month sent out a survey to our Kid Ventures families, just our annual survey during the school year to see how things are going. In that survey, 98% of families said they would recommend Kid Ventures to neighbors, friends, or other community members, which is always really exciting to see. In the Middle School Youth Center, we have just extended it a couple of weeks. Our targeted services programming is done, but we always have middle school students who want to continue attending the youth center, so we will keep that going for about another week and a half. And then we recently completed a Youth Enrichment League chess tournament in which we had 10 schools from the South Metro, of which Sibley, Bridgewater, and Greenville placed as the top 3 schools out of the 10 in the tournament, which is always, again, exciting to see. In some of our other areas, in the area of early childhood, Early Ventures updated security this year with a new fingerprint system. And so as part of the building upgrades and security that have taken place across the district, if you ever want to come to Longfellow and you have a child in Early Ventures, we have fingerprinted all parents or grandparents or whoever picks up, and they are able to enter through the door that is right by the child care center with just their fingerprint to come in and pick up their child, which is very handy either in the morning or at the end of the day for parents. If you happen to drive by the Northfield Community Resource Center on your way in tonight, you will see that it was truck and tractor night. We do have several, it's not raining.
And it's not raining.
We had several hundred families out there that are enjoying large trucks, small trucks. One of the most popular was a kayak that I saw lots of kids sitting in and testing out as well. So really an exciting night over there. The Early Childhood Initiative Coalition, which is also facilitated out of the Community Services Department, has started a 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten program, which is also very exciting. We are encouraging kids to read 1,000 books or have 1,000 books read to them by a parent, a grandparent, an older sibling before they enter kindergarten. And so this was launched at the end of April, and so families can keep track of how many books are being read, and there are prizes at each 100-level marker. So it's an exciting program to have started as well. And then just, again, in the community programs and back to facility use, in the last year, buildings were used on all but 13 days of the calendar year, which I think is important for this group to know. And those 13 days are primarily holidays. It's a couple of Saturdays in the summer, but we're really looking at about 13 holidays. So that means every other day of the year, community members, school district members had access to buildings, and one building or multiple buildings. So as we get into our budget, the community service budget goal is actually the same from last year. If you remember, we are still working to this goal, which is to work toward an overall fund balance that equals 2 months of the Community Services Division operating expenses without any of the 4 fund balances exceeding 25%. And this 2 months of our operating expenses is at roughly $315,000. This is 17% of our overall budget, which is where we're really trying to keep in line with where the district's general fund also falls in that 16 to 17%. So we are looking to do the same. In your board packets, you should also have received the budget worksheet, which is the Excel spreadsheet with colored, most of you have it up, lines on it. So that is the budget worksheet. So it also highlights the fund balances in each area. And as you can see, there is one fund balance in ECFE that is over that 25%, which is certainly something we are looking at because we do want to keep them all in balance. There's a couple things that just to note as you look at that fund balance. We are just coming off of the completion of our grant from the Southern Minnesota Initiative Foundation for outreach work in ECFE. So we were able to start some new programs and code a lot of our outreach work to this grant that we've now completed. So some of the cost savings we've had through this grant, we will now be seeing coming out of that budget. We also, if you remember, about a year and a half or 2 years ago, had some staffing switch changes in the ECFE where we moved from lead programmers down to 1 coordinator for early childhood. So we're also now being able to kind of recognize what the cost savings of those change in positions are, and are now able, having a better understanding of those numbers, to go forward and decide what's the best way we want to use those resources that we've saved by making those staffing changes. Part of the reason for this goal is, as projected in this slide here, is to really remain stable through economic downturns. And for those of you who've been on the board for a while, you've seen this chart before, and you can probably remember 09 and 10, where due to just the state of the economy, because as you will see on the next screen, more than 50% of our budget is dependent on participation fees. And so we are really susceptible to what is happening in the economy and whether people need child care or whether they have the luxury of taking enrichment or recreation classes is very dependent on larger economic issues. This budget is based off of several assumptions. Some of those in the revenues is that we are returning next year to an average in the school age child care special needs levy. This is a levy that is calculated on a 3-year average. In fiscal year 11, we did see an increase in our expenses there due to some students in programming that had special needs, which caused last year to be a decrease in the levy in the 3-year offset of that. So we will be returning next year to what is our typical levy dollar amount. The budget also assumes that we will be maintaining revenues in our fee-based programs from this current year. The recreation program is seeing a decrease in revenue due to some programs becoming high school sports. This would be programs like the lacrosse program and potentially the clay target team. And that was part of the goal when we started those programs. It wasn't, the goal was to also look at the potential for them to be high school sports. And so while this looks like a decrease in revenue, it was accounted for when we started those programs. It will also be a decrease in our expenses as well. So in addition to lacrosse and potentially the clay target team, we also, the Basketball Association, who we have done a lot of registering for in the past couple of years, is going to take on their own registration for their program, which again is almost an equal offset in both revenues and expenditures. And then of course we have several grant applications out. We are just starting to hear about a few of them, but most are unaccounted for yet for the ones we have written for the spring. And then in the expenditures for the assumptions, again, the appropriate increases in salaries, wages, and insurance. All members of the community service staff are in negotiation for contracts this year, so we have built in kind of an approximate wage increase, but obviously those will be settled over the next few months, and then we'll have the exact numbers there. It also reflects the continuation of the $10,000 contribution to the Northfield Healthy Community Initiative for the school district, and the $10,000 charge back to the school district for general operation budget due to our use of the facilities. Just then to also reflect where our revenue sources come from, and you can see about 30% is state aid and local levy dollars. 56% or just over $1 million is our participation fees. A small part then is also made up by the grant submitted And the other local sources is example the City of Northfield payment for the recreation program. It's also the Rice County Family Services Collaborative, of which we are the fiscal host, and then the Early Childhood Initiative Coalition, which is a small dollar amount as well. This pie chart then just also reflects how we make up our revenue sources. So we are projecting a fund balance as of June 30th of this year at $302,049. You can then see our revenues and expenditures for a projected fund balance at the end of fiscal year 15 at $20,663 for a projected fund balance at the end of June 30th, 2015 at just about $322,000, which would be very exciting because that would put us at the goal of where we would hope to land. This is also reflected on your budget worksheet. It's clearer in that document. I'd like to show this, although I would also like to argue that most of the community services expenditures directly benefit the K-12 programs, but I have highlighted a few of them here. I think that are probably most often thought of as when people think about what benefits the K-12 and district operations. I tried to reflect kind of those that are most popular, which is, if you look at the bottom, just 38% of our total budget goes to supporting different programs throughout the district. Of course, there are some variables in this budget, actual program enrollments that we obviously cannot predict for next year. Fee collection, I will say this is not something we have struggled with hugely in the past and don't foresee it being a problem in the future, but of course is one of those variables. And then obviously grant funding that we are still waiting on and that we will obviously also wait in the future as well. And with that, I will take any questions or comments.
Questions, board members? Well, while people are thinking, I want to comment that this is just a terrific story. I know that the economy plays a role, but the quality of the programs also plays a role, and you should really be congratulated, because I was just telling Dr. Richardson the things I hear about the programs from parents. It's just, that we have these wait lists and people wanting to be in the programs. That really speaks to it too. And looking at the financial stewardship is really exciting too.
Thank you.
Julie?
Well, I did have one question. First of all, thanks so much for an amazing presentation. And I love how you recapped the direct effects of the K-12. That was really great to see. You talked about the facility usage by our community. And I'm wondering, is there a cycle or a process that you use to timeline for reevaluation of what we charge and how we might benchmark that with other districts?
Yes, so we're actually in the process of that at the moment.
Okay.
So since being part of the Big 9 conference, we have actually, we're in the process of, as a Big 9 conference, reviewing all the facility policies. So not only our use policies, such as who has priority in scheduling and how does that look, and work down the ladder, as well as how the cost for scheduling is even down to the timeline of when people can schedule. So we not only though am I taking the Big 9 facility questionnaire and surveys that I've got on, I'm also trying to take neighboring communities that obviously are not part of the Big 9, but kind of thinking of the Farmington, the Lakeville, those that are in our close proximity that would also be very comparable to what we're doing. So with that, we're hoping to have that completed yet this summer. A couple of us, in most of the Big 9 conference communities, the facilities are run through the community education department or the community services department. So several of us put the survey together and have been working on getting it completed by those communities and are hoping to have it done here in the very near future.
Great, thank you.
Other questions? Well, thank you very much, Erin, and congratulations. Terrific report.
That's good.
All right, we are ready to move on to our first item for individual action, board members, which is the middle school dance at the Northfield Public Schools activity.
Okay, and again, I just want to remind you that back on April the 21st, the Activities Advisory Committee unanimously approved recommending to the board the middle school dance and play target become Northfield School District activities beginning in the 2014-15 year. If you remember, both of those activities, Tom Groutman and also Scott Quering were here at the last board meeting on the 28th. An opportunity to present information, an opportunity for a number of board members to ask individual questions. I know that since that time, basically, the board has received a number of email communications, and I know at least one board member went out to the range and got a chance to watch the operation in action, so may have some comments there in terms of that particular piece. So at this point in time, we're looking to make a decision on each of these activities. And again, I suggested in the agenda that we split those into two pieces so that we would review and vote on each one separately, with the initial recommendation by the superintendent to approve the middle school dance program as an activity for 2014, and then a second recommendation to approve the Clay Target League for implementation in the 2014-15 year. Both of these as recommended by the Activities Advisory Committee.
Very good. All right, so board members, the first item for individual action is the middle school dance as a Northfield School District activity. Since it is an item for individual action, I would ask for a motion moved by Noel. Is there a second?
Second.
So that's a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendation by Noel and seconded by John. Questions and discussion? Julie?
I just wanted to make a comment and thank the coach Liz Rojas. Okay, sorry about that, Liz. For coming up with this. I think it's a wonderful suggestion, and I think you alluded to middle school. They just want to be around after school. They want stuff to do, and I think this is going to serve those students really well. So I absolutely appreciate her bringing that forward.
Other comments or questions? No? All right. So we have a motion and a second on the table to approve the middle school dance as a Northfield School District activity. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right. Our second item for individual action, as Dr. Richardson mentioned, is the Clay Target as a Northfield School District activity. Once again, since this is an item for individual action, we would need a motion on the table to have our discussion. Moved by Rob to approve the superintendent's recommendation. Seconded by Julie. All right. Discussion. Ann?
Well, I'll just jump in and say that I'm still not in favor of this, and it's as I spoke at the last meeting. I don't like the pairing of a school district with the sport of shooting, and it's partially because of how our world is right now, and I have great concerns about that, and would prefer to have the school district not be a sponsor for it. I think having a private club is great, but I'm still uncomfortable with the idea of having our school district sponsoring this activity.
John?
I know Mr. Groutman's trying to stay out of my peripheral vision, but could we have him come up here and talk to us for a few minutes?
Sure. There's so much people, there's no space.
Hey, that's not peripheral vision, John. That's eyes in the back.
Oh my God, I know he's fine.
It's the red shirt.
Yes.
Yeah.
Here's the question that I have that came up in the discussion last time, and that isn't covered in the proposal. And what we discussed is that Mr. Quering is buying it. Basically, what there is there's sort of two fees for the students, right? There is one fee which goes to the school district, which is used to pay some administrative expenses and some other items that are
Yes.
covered in the budget.
Yes.
And then there is another fee which is paid to the club, which is then administered by Mr. Clearing, and, or whoever the coach would be, after that to pay for the ammunition and the targets and some other costs. And my question is, do we have other sports that are administered like that, where there is a budget that the school district controls and a budget that the school district doesn't control?
Well, I think just off the top of my head, the things that I can relate the most would be other sports where the school doesn't provide all the equipment needs that would be needed, such as golf and golf clubs, hockey skates, hockey sticks, lacrosse equipment, a lot of different lacrosse equipment, including sticks. So I think those would be the closest things that I can relate to that, just off the top of my head. So I would say yes, certainly the school district does not provide in most every sport. There are some outside needs that parents end up paying for their own children.
And here's my concern, and again, no aspersions of Mr. Clearing or anyone else, but is having funds that are collected that the school district doesn't account for. I mean, it's one thing to buy your own golf clubs. It's another, show up with your own skates and some of your own equipment. It's another thing to have a fee that's collected that the school district, in the school district sport that the school district doesn't control. And obviously we can't control because the school district can't be buying the ammunition. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, that's the issue that I have. And I guess my question is there a way for us to control for that in terms of an expenditure that we're not keeping track of? Or
that's something I would have to investigate. I can't. All the research I've done with other schools, no other school that I know buys the ammunition for their clay target team that I know of. Now again, that's something I could research to try to find out, but I think that would be very remote to find any district that sponsors clay target. And now there's over 200 that would buy the ammunition. I think it's commonplace that clay target teams in the state of Minnesota are doing what we would propose to do, and that would be the coach takes care of it, the coach distributes it, it's all done at the site, and the school just stays out of that piece. That's what I think. Again, in all my research, I've not found any school that's purchasing that kind of stuff.
And I think there's a concern that we probably can't do that. So my question is the better practice to do what is proposed here, which is to have the coach collect the fee and buy the ammunition and buy the targets, or to have the students, if we're to do this, show up with their own ammunition or not be able to shoot, or what is the best practice in terms of dealing with that?
Well, I'm going to speak for Scott a little bit, but I think the best practice is the way that it's been done. And I can't think that doing it a different way is going to improve the cost for the kids, the efficiency of getting it done, and the safety aspect. I think those three things all get addressed by the way it's currently been done. And I think that's the way it should continue if it gets moved forward.
Thank you. Because I think that the key pieces are you're going to have absolute control on the ammunition that's purchased. Every student's going to have exactly the same ammunition, so you don't have any differences. You have no reloads, so you don't have any issues with any kind of safety issues there. And the control is set so that what then kids bring back each time as they practice is just enough, the 2 boxes of shells coming to each practice, which is what they end up shooting during the time. My question, Tom, would just be simply if we look at bowling, obviously we collect a fee for bowling, but we don't pay for their lines of bowling, correct?
Correct. It goes right to...
That is paid directly to the bowling alley for that piece.
Absolutely.
I don't know with Nordic skiing, are we paying that, or do kids pay for skiing when they get there?
For Alpine,
for Alpine?
they have to buy a season pass at the area.
Okay, and that's out. We don't buy the season pass the individual students buy the season pass. So I think there are several elements where it would be very comparable for those things that are like this particular recommendation.
But I think you're still describing something very different than the coach collecting the fee, administering and administering the money. And I guess that's where I have a concern about a pot of money that is administered by the coach directly outside of the school. Because here it is, if it's a school activity, I think there's a world of difference between buying a season pass at Welch Village and giving up a chunk of money to the coach, who then administers the money and does, and pays for expenses with it. And there's also, I think, a big difference between paying the bowling alley for shoe rental or lanes and paying the coach, and then the coach paying the fees on behalf of the students, and whatever that winds up being. So I think there's a big difference in the way this is proposed and what you're describing as well.
Scott Queering, is Scott able to make a comment to the board? He asked me if he could say something. I'm not sure if that's proper.
Is it in response to the question?
I believe it would be.
If it's in response to the question, yeah.
Is that okay?
Mhm.
All right.
The same concerns about improprieties are our concern also, and we've been in existence for about a year here, and we've had great controls put into place. No one person is in charge. We have 3 people on the checkbook right now, and we have oversight over that. Through our fundraising efforts, we have been working on collecting enough funds in order to incorporate a 501c3 program nonprofit. Along with that comes articles of incorporation, which you have to have a board, you have to have certain protocols set forth. So that is something that I don't have in place right at this point. I've been doing the research, I've got the documents for it. I just need to physically get them through an attorney or an accountant and have them filed, and it's about a $1,200 fee to do that. So we haven't been able to do it up to this point due to funds, but we believe we'll have it in place here this summer.
And just to be clear again, I'm not suggesting that I think you're going to do anything improper with the money. I'm just saying that, I have a concern that if we have a school-run sport and we have a fund that is administered by the school and a fund that is administered by not the school, that raises issues that aren't fully, that haven't been that well explored in this proposal. And that's where I'm just trying to make sure that we understand what we're doing in improving this, and it's not as,
Tom, how would you look at this in terms of things like group buys? In terms of it's not uncommon for a sport coach to say, hey, we're gonna to get a better deal on this, we're gonna offer you an opportunity to group buy shoes or bats or whatever it be. I don't believe that's totally uncommon. And then in addition, we do have booster clubs, not just a big booster club, but we do have individual booster clubs for various sports that do, provide some pieces for those teams. How would you see, because this is unique, how would you compare that, Tom, to what we currently have in those booster clubs and things like group buys? Obviously, this is a different group buy than other athletic equipment that we have, but how would you see the similarities and the different contrasting pieces there?
Well, for those type of things, normally there's fundraising that goes on for a team to put that into place. And they fundraise specifically for what you might be saying. It might be a warm-up jacket or suit or whatever it is. What we do is we set up student activity accounts for all of our activities. That fundraising money comes in and goes into that student activity account for that activity. With that said, we would, if this becomes an activity, we would set up a Clay Target activity account. However, I'm not so sure it's legal, I'm not so sure it's prudent that we would actually set up a student activity account and actually then put the money in there to buy the ammunition. I really think we need to do what other districts will do, and that is, what currently is being done. So there's differences with that. Again, we want all that money that comes in funneled into the school so that it has jurisdiction over, I have jurisdiction over that. So does the principal. We see what's coming in, we see what's going out. We need to sign for it. Where's Val? Is Val still here? Okay, Val, you can tell her I talked about Val and about auditors and about accountability and making sure that we're doing the checkoff like we're supposed to. So again, I don't see the money coming into that student activity account for the ammunition piece. I think that should stay separate and it should be done the way it's done. So it is, John, I believe it is different because it is ammunition, but it's not completely, I don't think, out of the realm of something that we should do. I think Scott addressed some things as well as far as accountability.
And here's how I understood what we were told last time. Mr. Quiring, you can certainly correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is that then there's a fee that's collected to pay for the targets and the ammunition, that they purchase the ammunition at some discount, distribute that to the students. So I guess my question is that fund, that amount of money, something that should be accounted for to the district, even though we're not administering the money? Because obviously it's not like a traditional sport where we would have that fund money go into the student activity account as you just described.
Right, I think I understand that piece. I think that's something that I can work with that staff as far as, okay, here's the money that's coming in for that ammunition, and here's what just went out. Here's the number of boxes that went out. And that would be records that I would be able to keep, and it's still being done by the people at Morristown Gun Club, by Scott Quiring and his staff. So I think we could keep records of something like that. Something I haven't thought about doing, but certainly I could have a file on that. That would make sense.
Thank you.
Carrie? First, I want to thank you all for coming tonight, and I want to thank everybody who weighed in on both sides of this issue. It's been really neat to hear the kids talk about what this activity means to you, and I think parents have to be really, really proud of their kids for the confidence and poise that they showed tonight in speaking to us. And you talked a lot about the benefits of this activity, and as a parent, I really see that. It's such a joy for your child to find something that is something they can really focus on. It requires a lot of discipline and a lot of determination and that kind of concentrated effort to improve skills. And I really understand the desire to have a sense of belonging to a team and being part of that. What I'm struggling with is this just seems to be an activity that has no natural connection to the public schools. We've spent a lot of time talking about how the ammunition cannot be in any way connected to the schools. The equipment can't be connected to the schools. Practice can't happen at the schools. Competitions can't happen at the schools. And so, although I recognize the incredible value of this for the folks that are involved in it and how important it is to you, I don't see that it has a connection to the public schools other than what you're asking us to do tonight. And to me, that just doesn't make sense to create a connection through a lettering program for an activity that otherwise has no connection to the public schools.
Are you allowed to ask questions?
No. It's and what I hear is the strong argument for making it a varsity sport and being able to letter in it is so that the people who participate in it can have that sense of belonging and be rewarded and recognized for their accomplishments. But you have that already with your team, and nothing we do here tonight can take that away from you. That sense of being part of a team and belonging to something. And the Clay Target League is incredible at how they promote this activity. And that's not going to change if we don't make this a varsity sport and give you a letter for that. So although I recognize the value and I see that this is so important to all of you, I just don't see the connection to the schools. And I want our young people to participate in all kinds of wonderful things that build self-confidence and self-esteem and, you know, make you work really hard and help you build lifelong skills and friendships and all of that. And we have many of those things that people do that are not varsity sports. And I think it's appropriate that this remain not a varsity sport. And I'm sorry, because I know that's a disappointment to you, but I just don't see the connection to the schools.
Rob?
Well, I guess I visited the gun club on Sunday the 4th, and I watched the team in action, and I was really impressed, first of all, by the coaches who were very knowledgeable and very supportive, and I saw some students who were struggling, not doing as well as they normally do, and they were taken aside and helped and given pointers, and I was very impressed by the attentiveness and the skill of the staff. And I was impressed by the sense of community that had developed among the students and the coaches, and that there were parents there. And I saw boys and girls on squads together, so there were, I saw a bunch of big football players, and I saw a girl in a Science Olympiad letter jacket competing together. I talked to students who were hunters, some who weren't hunters, and I talked to students who were not involved in traditional sports at all, and this was an activity that they felt that they could be a participant in a sport with other athletes and non-athletes. So I was very impressed by the inclusiveness of the atmosphere, and I like to see that. And I think going back to the first objection about the connection between schools and guns, we probably all know that guns are the second leading cause of death among teenagers in this country. Cars are the first. And with cars, we treat that as a public health issue. And the schools don't back away from educating students in the responsible use of cars. We have driver education that we've talked about. And I think it's totally appropriate for schools to be involved in those educational efforts with the safe use of guns. Especially, we're in a rural area in Minnesota where young people are going to be using guns for legitimate sporting purposes. And I think it's within the mission of a school district to be part of that education and that public health effort and training kids to use them properly. I was looking up today, there's been studies by researchers at Harvard, and these are researchers who are not people who are beloved of the NRA, because they do want some regulations of guns, and they say that one of the most important factors in reducing gun violence is to create supportive communities where adults are monitoring gun use among their children and where young people support and feel responsible for each other. And I think that's what I saw out on the gun range, and this is the kind of opportunity that those participants will be provided with. In the emails that we've all received, it's been a recurring theme that the Clay Target team is inclusive and supportive, and that it fosters a sense of belonging as well as a sense of accomplishment. And I think it's something that's totally appropriate for the school to support. And then the objection about, since it's already a club sport, why is it important for someone to earn a varsity letter? I think that raises the question, why is a varsity letter important for any activity, if not for Clay Target, and why for football? And I'm saying that as somebody who in high school I was really good at only two sports, which were badminton and archery, and neither of those were varsity sports. I think earning a letter recognizes skill and sportsmanship and dedication. It recognizes making a contribution to the team and links personal excellence with the excellence of the school and the community. And I think that you have earned the right to receive that recommendation, so I support this.
Julie?
Thank you. I want to echo what Carrie Nelson said, and thank you everyone for coming tonight. And really, through your emails and the comments that we've heard directly from athletes, I think it allowed us to make a much more informed decision as a board regarding this proposal. And what I think about is, as board members, educators, and community members, how we always and readily acknowledge the important benefits students receive from being a part of co-curricular activities. And I believe that, like Rob, these Clay Target athletes deserve to be recognized for their achievements like the other athletes at their school. And I think that there's a number of ways that the co-curricular activities benefit, which many of you spoke to, but I think two important things are motivation for maintaining good grades and remaining chemically free, which we know are important issues. So I do plan to support the proposal this evening.
No?
Thank you all for coming. Your presence here as an individual group was appreciated, and thank you. If you agree with what I say, don't applaud, and if you disagree, don't boo. Thank you not to do either. A few issues that come to the board during the time I've been on the board that I've had these extremes. One hand guns, on the other hand, a tremendous training program to be able to support an activity. There are times when I vote in what I believe is an ethical decision. There are times when I vote based on my own research, and there are times when I vote based on community input. And I think this is an issue where the community input to the board is going to trump the other reasons that I might make a decision. The citizens, to me, have communicated in a clear and in a concise, thoughtful argument asking me to support their request for clay targeting shooting competition as a sponsored Northfield High School activity program, and I do plan to support that.
Okay. I will tell the board how I've been thinking too, and then if there's other board members that want to talk, we'll get a second chance. So I want to thank everyone for coming, and I particularly want to thank Katie and Lauren and Mackenzie, and I don't know if Eric's still here, but it takes a lot of courage for the students to speak, so thank you. And thank you, Scott, for taking 2 evenings to answer our questions. So I've been thinking through, and I appreciated Rob's characterization of the practice, and he posted a YouTube video, so it was helpful to see the practice myself that way. And thinking through whether it was compatible or not for the school, and thinking through that aspect. We already have activities that can't take place on the school property, but that's more about terrain than about the equipment. So then I started thinking about what if we had fencing or archery or martial arts, or like some sort of thing with horses was the next big sport. I don't think we'd change our policy. We certainly wouldn't allow that equipment on the school property. Those policies are there for a reason. They need to be in place, and that's for behavior that's not connected with whatever that sport would be. So I really recognize the board members that philosophically have a hard time with that and connecting it to the school, but I guess I ended up in a little bit different spot, thinking about the sport being different than the policies that we have in place, and for very different reasons. I think that the subcommittee did a very nice job of vetting what was presented to the board, and I really appreciated our questions being answered. And, you know, like Rob and Noel mentioned about the lettering, you know, I had actually talked to my kids about that. I'm like, is it really that big a deal? Because that's really what's on the table here. You know, everything, you know, we're not doing a whole lot. And it is, you know, we might not recognize it when we're sitting here at our age, but that connection is important and that recognition is important. And I guess I saw good things from what Rob shared, and I am supportive of it too. John?
Well, I guess I would say that I've been on all sides of this as we've gone through the discussion, and I think that Carrie and Ann make some good points as well. but I was also very impressed by the well-spoken young students and the points that they've made. And I know that gun safety is very important. I'm not a hunter, but I've been through a lot of gun safety training, and I've fired a lot of guns over the years, and a lot of different kinds of guns. And so I understand that the safe use of weapons. So I'm sure probably everybody in here could shoot me and trap, but I think that there is. I had the same issue at the beginning in terms of whether or not earning a letter is that important. I played club soccer until it became a varsity sport my senior year at Northfield High School. And when I was on the school student council here, we had many arguments about whether the band should get letters. In fact, that's what every student council meeting was about, I think. But sometimes I feel like I'm still in that meeting. But I have decided to support the proposal. I do think that the objections have been responded to appropriately. I think that certainly this is a dedicated and well thought out program, and I think that I'm confident that the leadership can help deal with any issues that arise. So I do intend to support it as well.
Other comments or questions? I would like to thank the board members here for their thoughtful consideration, and I very much respect everybody's opinion here, so thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second on the table to support the superintendent's recommendation to make the clay target activity a high school activity. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay. Roll call.
Roll call.
Fossum.
Aye.
Maple.
Nay.
Pritchard.
Aye.
Nelson.
Nay.
Hardy.
Aye.
Stratmon.
Yes.
Iverson.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right.
I'd like to say to the students, I think there's a lesson that you could learn from the activity that you saw at the board tonight. We don't always agree, but we always deal with it in a democratic way. And I hope that's a message that also came through tonight.
With that, we are ready to move on to our items in the consent grouping, and I'll remind board members there were some additional items added to the table file, and we'll wait a minute to...
Would you like us to put some
They're gonna put all this stuff. That would be great if you could at least get them back to the, it'll save our custodians time setting them after you guys leave. Thank you.
Board members, so I'll remind you that there were a few additional personnel items added in your package.
Yeah, that should be good. Yeah, that should be good. Thank you. We're trying to put chairs where they never have been.
So is there anything anyone wishes to pull from the consent grouping? Yeah, I wondered if you were going to... Do you want to abstain?
I would like to abstain from voting on my son's summer employment with the school district.
Right.
So I'm sure he'll be a great employee, but I don't think it's appropriate for me to vote.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the consent grouping? Moved by Noel. Second by Ann. All those in favor of approving the consent grouping, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? One abstention. Motion carries. All right, items for information. Board members, you had in your packet the latest enrollment report. Anything you want to add about that?
Nothing exciting.
No? Good numbers?
As we sit at about 3,900, as we have for most of the last 10 years, it's always good to end up the year about as high as we've been. So it's good to have it on the high side at the end, because that's typically when it tends to fall away. So to have 3,901 students still in place May 1 is a good thing.
And upcoming dates, board members, you should have received in the mail the Area Learning Center graduation. I call attention to it because it's a Friday instead of a Wednesday this year. So at 1 o'clock at Longfellow, and then June 1st. And you should have received an email from Danita. If you have any problems finding your cap and gown, speak now, prepare a folder, please.
Yeah, or if you have any special requests of who to give the diploma to. I understand there are two, but
Yeah.
Lori has that.
Okay. All right.
All right.
So, anything you wanted to add on this?
No, I think we're all good. And again, I know that adults and the students do appreciate attendance at the ALC graduation if you can. Obviously, we know where we'll find you at the regular graduation, but it's also nice to do the ALC with us. So a good thing.
All right. Future meetings, take note that it's a Tuesday because of Memorial Day in May, and then we're on to a June meeting already. So with that, I would ask for a motion for adjournment. So moved by Ann, seconded by John. All those in favor of adjourning the meeting say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting is adjourned.